The prosecution revealed a CCTV video allegedly from Simon Ekpa's office, showing him on a call instructing someone in Nigeria to remove government officials from the southeastern region using force if needed. The judge questioned the video's authenticity. The prosecution stated it was analyzed by a certified forensic video expert, confirmed unaltered, and backed by a documented chain of custody. The CCTV video showed Simon Ekpa in a black suit and red tie, walking and speaking on the phone, giving controversial and potentially incriminating directives related to government personnel in Nigeria. The prosecutor declared the video irrefutable proof of Simon Ekpa's intent and involvement in actions that allegedly incited violence, calling it the most damning evidence so far. A forensic video analyst confirmed the footage was authentic, unedited, and matched metadata such as timestamps and location data to support its validity. A second witness, a telecom expert, verified that Simon Ekpa's call logs matched exactly with the CCTV footage in terms of timing and activity, strengthening the prosecution's case. Simon Ekpa personally cross-examined the telecom analyst, raising doubts about system accuracy, potential glitches, and whether someone else could have used his phone. He highlighted that the location data from the phone was only accurate to a general area, not specific enough to prove he was the one on the call in the CCTV footage. He argued that prior context given to the analyst might have biased the interpretation, and pointed out that the analyst couldn't definitively confirm Simon Ekpa made the call. After the intense cross-examinations and evidence presentation, the judge prepared to make a formal statement, indicating the hearing had reached a critical turning point. Simon Ekpa challenged the accuracy of the technological evidence, highlighting potential errors in timestamps, reliance on backup systems, and the possibility of someone else using his phone. He stressed that data could be misinterpreted and urged the court to consider the full context, not just seemingly precise information. Simon Ekpa questioned the credibility and objectivity of the prosecution's expert witness, suggesting that prior knowledge of the case may have influenced their interpretation and conclusions, and reminded the court that the evidence placed him in a general area, not at the crime scene. The presiding judge reminded the jury of the principle of presumption of innocence and emphasized their duty to evaluate all evidence critically, weigh both sides fairly, and base their verdict solely on reason and the law, not emotion, assumption, or bias. After all testimonies and arguments were heard, the judge called for a recess and instructed the defense team to present their own witnesses in the next hearing to counter the more than 9 witnesses already brought by the prosecution. Simon Ekpa was praised for his articulate self-representation, including cross-examining a Nigerian police officer and revealing inconsistencies in his testimony. His ability to challenge the prosecution's narrative without much help from his legal team was highlighted as a strong point in his favor. What happened in court today involving Simon Ekpa was nothing short of electrifying. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was tense, expectant, and at times almost breathless. People sat rigid in their seats, ears tuned sharply to every word that passed between the judge, the prosecution, and Simon Ekpa himself. Onlookers, some present as journalists, others as interested citizens, and a few as legal observers, watched closely as the proceedings unfolded in what has become one of the most controversial and high-profile legal battles in recent Nigerian judicial history. And as the layers of evidence were slowly peeled back, many in the room were left speechless, unsure of what to believe, and stunned by the depth of both the accusations and the defense. To understand how we arrived at this point today, it is important to revisit the broader context that has surrounded Simon Nyoku Ekpa. For several months now, he has been at the center of a legal firestorm, accused of inciting violence, spreading destabilizing rhetoric, and allegedly orchestrating actions that threaten the sovereignty and internal security of the southeastern region of Nigeria. The prosecution claims that Simon Nyoku Ekpa, a vocal political activist who resides in Finland, used various platforms to incite violent actions and civil disobedience against government institutions in Nigeria. According to the prosecution, his actions were not merely ideological expressions or speech protected under freedom of expression, but were direct operational commands meant to trigger unrest and, as they alleged, targeted physical threats against Nigerian government personnel. Today's hearing marked a major turning point in the case. The prosecution revealed what they considered their most critical and damning piece of evidence so far, a closed-circuit television video purportedly taken from within Simon Nyoku Ekpa's personal office in Finland. In the video, Simon Nyoku Ekpa could be clearly seen wearing a formal black suit with a bright red tie. He was shown pacing slowly across a room while speaking on a mobile phone, his gestures sharp and deliberate. What made this video particularly consequential was not just the fact that he was on the phone, but what the prosecution alleged he was saying. According to the prosecuting attorney, whose voice was steady but firm as he addressed the court, the video showed Simon Nyoku Ekpa instructing someone located in Nigeria to remove certain government officials from their posts in the southeastern region. The instructions, according to the prosecutor, were explicitly coercive, suggesting that if removal could not be achieved by legal or civil means, then force should be considered as an option. The courtroom fell into a pin-drop silence as these words were spoken aloud, followed by murmurs of disbelief and shock. The idea that someone, especially someone living outside the country, could be giving such direct and dangerous instructions shook many people present. However, almost immediately, the presiding judge, an experienced jurist known for a sharp legal mind and impartial conduct, interrupted the proceedings to question the authenticity of the video evidence. In a calm but probing tone, the judge asked whether the video could be confirmed as authentic, whether it had been altered or edited in any way, and whether the proper legal protocols had been followed in obtaining and presenting it to the court. In response to these critical inquiries, the prosecution assured the court that the video had undergone a thorough forensic examination by a certified video analysis expert. They presented a detailed report from the forensic specialist who had examined the video frame by frame. According to this report, the footage was completely unaltered, authentic, and aligned perfectly with the metadata. Information such as timestamps, device ID, and even embedded geolocation data. The prosecution further insisted that a verifiable and uninterrupted chain of custody had been maintained from the moment the video was first retrieved through to its presentation in court, ensuring that it had not been tampered with at any point. As the video was played for the courtroom, some people turned their eyes away, others stared in disbelief, and a few scribbled notes feverishly. The figure on the screen, confident, assertive, and seemingly in control, was indeed unmistakably Simon Nyoku Ekpa. He was seen speaking on the phone, his hand slicing through the air for emphasis as he paced back and forth. The prosecutor claimed that this was the very moment when he issued the orders that now formed the basis of some of the gravest charges against him. But the prosecution did not stop there. They brought forward a second expert witness, a telecommunications analyst with decades of experience working with encrypted call data, location services, and mobile network triangulation. This expert testified under oath that the call logs retrieved from Simon Nyoku Ekpa's phone provider matched perfectly with the time and duration shown in the CCTV footage. According to the analyst, the records showed that a phone call was indeed made from Simon Nyoku Ekpa's registered number at precisely the same time shown on the video. The location data tied to the call, though not precise to the meter, indicated that the phone was active within the same general geographic zone as the office where the CCTV video was recorded. This convergence of digital, visual, and temporal evidence appeared, at first glance, to be a slam dunk for the prosecution. They called it a harmonized chain of truth, tying the actions, the location, and the communication all back to Simon Nyoku Ekpa. The prosecuting attorney even paused to look directly at the jury and declared that this evidence was, in his words, irrefutable proof of intent, direction, and involvement in actions that aimed to destabilize a region and threaten public officials. But just as it seemed the scales of justice were tilting heavily in favor of the prosecution, Simon Nyoku Ekpa stood up and did something that left many observers in awe. He chose to personally cross-examine the telecommunications expert. Representing himself in that moment with striking confidence and clarity, Simon Nyoku Ekpa began a line of questioning that introduced a substantial degree of doubt into what had appeared to be rock-solid evidence. Simon Nyoku Ekpa asked the analyst whether the phone system used could guarantee that he personally had made the call in question, rather than someone else using his phone. The analyst admitted that from a technical standpoint, the system could not verify the actual person holding the phone, only that the phone number and device were active during that time. Simon Nyoku Ekpa continued, probing deeper, questioning whether the location data from the phone was specific enough to conclusively prove that he had been in the room shown in the CCTV video. The analyst acknowledged that the data showed only a general vicinity, not a pinpointed indoor location. This, Simon Nyoku Ekpa argued, introduced reasonable doubt. He then questioned the expert's objectivity, asking whether the analyst had received prior information about the case that might have biased his interpretation of the data. Again, the analyst acknowledged that he had reviewed the case file before analyzing the call logs. Simon Nyoku Ekpa seized on this point, suggesting that preconceptions could have influenced how the analyst read the data, especially when complex technical systems were open to varying interpretations. He went on to challenge the reliability of timestamps, arguing that they might be off by seconds or even minutes due to synchronization errors in network servers or phone clocks. He asked about the reliance on backup systems in mobile data storage and how those could sometimes introduce glitches. In essence, he painted a picture of technological uncertainty that, while not completely undermining the evidence, certainly cast doubt on its absolute reliability. This strategic cross-examination did not go unnoticed. The judge leaned forward at times, clearly engaged in the line of questioning. Members of the jury looked puzzled, some nodding slightly, perhaps acknowledging the complexity and fragility of what had once seemed like unshakable evidence. The defense was visibly energized by Simon Nyoku Ekpa's performance, and even the prosecution seemed momentarily thrown off balance. At one point, Simon Nyoku Ekpa raised his voice just slightly, not in anger, but with a controlled intensity, as he reminded the court that the phone data placed him in a general area, not in the specific room where the CCTV was filmed. He asked with rhetorical flair whether the prosecution could say with 100% certainty that no one else could have used his phone, or that the CCTV video's audio, if there was any, could be independently verified. There was no audio in the footage, only visuals and inferred dialogue based on gestures and metadata. This, he argued, left room for misinterpretation. As the cross-examination drew to a close, the judge took a moment to remind the jury of one of the most sacred principles in any criminal trial, the presumption of innocence. He emphasized that it was not the responsibility of the accused to prove innocence, but rather the duty of the state to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. He urged the jury to be careful not to let emotion, public opinion, or assumption cloud their judgment. Every piece of evidence, he said, must be evaluated on its merits, its reliability, and its lawfulness. The courtroom recessed for a short break, but the energy in the air was palpable. People filed out into the hallway, whispering to one another, some shaking their heads, others seemingly convinced by Simon Nyoku Ekpa's sharp self-defense. He had not only responded to the prosecution's evidence, but had done so in a way that reframed the entire narrative, at least for the moment. When the court resumed, the judge announced that today's session had reached a critical turning point. He formally requested that Simon Nyoku Ekpa and his legal team prepare their defense witnesses for the next hearing. The prosecution, he noted, had already called more than 9 different witnesses, each contributing a piece to the puzzle. It was now time for the defense to provide its counter-narrative. In closing the day's session, the judge acknowledged Simon Nyoku Ekpa's articulate performance in cross-examining the telecommunications expert, and even earlier, a Nigerian police officer whose testimony had been riddled with inconsistencies that Simon Nyoku Ekpa himself had successfully pointed out. His ability to challenge the prosecution without relying heavily on legal counsel was not only noted, but also quietly praised by several legal observers in the room. Today was a day that few who were present will forget. It brought drama, intensity, and the sobering realization that the line between truth and assumption can be incredibly thin, especially in a courtroom where lives, reputations, and futures hang in the balance. Whether Simon Nyoku Ekpa is ultimately found guilty or innocent remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: he is not going down without a fight, and his ability to wield both logic and law may yet reshape the outcome of this extraordinary case. As the court emptied after the judge's final words that day, the echoes of the trial lingered in every corridor. Conversations flowed like quiet rivers in the background, and although no final judgment had yet been delivered, there was a sense that something monumental had just taken place. The day's hearing wasn't merely about the display of digital evidence or legal debate. It became a human drama, a moment of reckoning that forced everyone, including the judge, the prosecution, the defense, and even the public, to wrestle with what truth looks like in the age of surveillance, data, and influence. After the judge called for a recess and instructed the defense to prepare its witnesses, the court transitioned from one phase of the trial to another. What had previously been a prosecution-led narrative was now about to be balanced by the defense's version of events. Legal analysts and experts watching the proceedings noted that the shift in tone was vital. Up until that point, Simon Nyoku Ekpa had stood more as a respondent than a challenger. Now, he would have the opportunity to present his own evidence, call his own witnesses, and finally tell his story in full, one that he had hinted at throughout the hearings, but which had not yet been revealed in a structured legal form. There was a sense of admiration, even among some of his detractors, for how Simon Nyoku Ekpa had handled himself in the courtroom. His ability to articulate complex legal and technical arguments while remaining composed under pressure added to his mystique. He was not flustered by the gravity of the allegations, nor by the number of witnesses the prosecution had brought against him. In fact, many who observed the proceedings commented on his poise and sense of control, saying that it was as though he had been preparing for this moment for years. What happened in that courtroom today left an indelible mark, not just on those who witnessed it, but on the fabric of the judicial and political landscape itself. And the full story, still unfolding, was far from over. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.